interesting to see how we can kind of tease out some of those challenges that have kind of come through the projects and how they've been sort of dealt with who we've got here on the panel today. So without further ado, on the panel today we've got Clayton from SoundPad, and we've got Matt Davenport and Rosie Fairchild from Splash and Ripple, and React as well. So they're going to be talking about their projects, and we're going to sort of tease out, I think, as much as we can, the things that kind of really worked, and those kind of elements around participation. What does participation really actually kind of means? What does audience engagement really kind of look like? And when is it successful? How do you actually really know how much you've kind of actually engaged people? So I'll be here to kind of pull some of those things out. So I'm going to pass on to Clayton, who's going to talk about SoundPad.
Okay, thanks, Mitra. SoundPad. Okay, I'm going to talk about these next few items here. The story so far, what we've been doing at SoundPad, this is part of the brief that I had. Things that worked well and less well, I'll be talking about throughout. Some of the unexpected successes and the opportunities that we feel that we might be able to tap into, and focusing on some of the projects that we've been working on and are about to work on as well. SoundPad, in case you don't know, is around 21 or 2 years old, 22 years old. It focuses on a variety of art forms with heritage from South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. We work with a variety of organisations and venues in and around the region, but also nationally and internationally. And just thinking about why SoundPad's working in the area of digital, I think is quite an interesting point to make. And for us, it's around just making sure that culturally diverse arts remain as accessible and relevant to the global changes that affect all organisations in society. It also demonstrates the new ways that culturally diverse arts and heritage can embrace digital technology. And I say arts and heritage because we're doing more work around heritage as well now. Going through some of the projects that we've worked on so far, I'm going to just quickly run through some of them and focus in a bit more detail on one or two others. This is one of the first forays into digital that we worked on. I'm also going to talk a bit about some of the things that didn't work about it. It was called Dance Dub. It was taken from one of the popular ideas of lip dub. I don't know if you're familiar with that. One of the most popular organisations, or I should say it was a kind of student body that worked on this, was the Université de Quebec in Canada, who lip-synced a Black Eyed Peas track, I Got a Feeling, with a performance that went around the university campus. We did something similar called Dance Dub. We did it at the New Art Gallery Warsaw, and it was a dance piece that went in around the place. There is a link, but sorry, I haven't got it to play here because it's going to take too long if I start playing all sorts of links. I just wanted to say that it was very positive. We had over 70 dancers performing, and there was a 3-minute track. It was played in one single, what would you call it? It was a Steadicam that played one single track. One of the things that we wanted to do with this was to try and make something that went viral. And I deliberately put on the page views on there because you can see that there's only 334 views. So trying to make something go viral and talking about things that didn't go right, that was something that didn't go right. However, we did get a lot of people interested in the project. We had, in terms of it being a participatory project, we feel that it was successful in that sense. One of the other projects we worked on is called Radius 5. Again, it had its success elements and its areas of, if we want to call it failure, we can call it that, but I'll just go through some of this. It was a youth volunteering project aimed at offering creative opportunities for 16 to 24-year-olds, and it was based within a 5-mile radius of the Midland Arts Centre, where SoundPad is based. It was to look at youth culture around in and around Birmingham, a way for us to connect with young people and to offer opportunities and volunteering experiences. The positives for the project were that we were able to develop a new way of working with young people. We worked on a data visualization where young people helped us map out and chart popular cultural activities that young people are involved with, and it was through a series of tagging through different websites or things like Tumblr, YouTube and Flickr. So it was using existing platforms out there already. We engaged with over 100 young people, offering new skills, which was great. Negatives, I would say, were the longevity of the project. It doesn't exist anymore. The website, the data visualization, that was a learning curve for us. Understanding who is in control of long-term content is an issue, and where that sort of data sits. So we didn't have it sitting on our server, it sat on a different server. We worked with a company called Substrat to deliver this, a Birmingham-based company who delivered all of the data visualization content. One of the influences for a lot of the work that we're doing is through an organisation called Media Lab Prado, which is based in Madrid. Through some European funding, we were able to upskill a number of staff members from SAMPAD, but also staff members from MAC, Midland Art Centre, you can see one over there, some curators, producers and artists, sending them out there to find out more about the way that artists and the arts organisations can engage with technology. Media Lab Prado we see as a bit of a bellwether. It does a lot of work around data visualisation, about the use of Creative Commons licenses. They bring together a number of different disciplines, artists, academics, people working in coding and programming to create and think about ways of generating new prototypes and new content. So we thought it was a good organisation to work with. From our point of view, this offers new opportunities. We're currently also going to be looking at sending out some more people, if anybody's interested, in about April next year on a project that they're working on called Interactivos, which will be about bringing people from different disciplines together over a 3-week period, and they can help to support the development of new products.
Is that interactive and then OS?
Yeah. It's worth visiting the Media Lab website actually to see about the Interactivos project. I think it'll probably be one of the first things that shows up when you enter the site. One of the other projects that unfortunately I was going to be hoping that Alex Tennyson was going to be talking about a bit more is called Mandala. Alex Tennyson works for a company called SEPA, who we partnered with to deliver a big outdoor spectacle as part of the London 2012 festival that happened earlier on this year. We do have a short film of it that will be played at some point.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Okay. We'll have a short film that will be played at some point. But essentially it was music, dance, performance outside the town hall in Birmingham with 3D architectural projection mapping. I don't know to what extent people know about that, but you'll see a bit of it later anyway. So it's a bit of a marriage between performance art and digital technology. I first saw the use of this sort of technology at a visit to Ars Electronica Festival in 2008. And since then, it's really grown and become quite advanced and quite elaborate in the way that it's used nowadays. So we thought that that was a nice solution to delivering a big spectacular event. Another project that we're working on, which I'll spend a bit more time on, is called My Route. It's a heritage project, but it will feature some art activities as well. It's focusing on the areas of Spark Brook, Spark Hill and Hall Green in Birmingham. And for those who don't know those areas, it's a bit of a microcosm of the kind of story of immigration and migration in the UK. We're going to work with communities to look at different perspectives of the stories that they might have around why they move into the area, and people that have moved out of the area, why they moved out. And there's an assumption that's made that people move in and then they kind of move slowly and steadily up the road to more affluent areas. With that project, it's around looking at hard-to-reach communities, engaging with technology, having people engage as volunteers, contributors, and helping to shape and design the project with us. The use of technology will help us to ensure that we reach communities and making sure that we help those communities remain relevant to the work that's happening around digital technology as well. We're currently in the development stage for this, and it will use a variety of things, technology, but particularly data visualization, because the whole of the content is going to be designed around the type of data that we get, using predominantly census data over a number of different themes. Once we get the high points or the kind of key themes, we'll then start to try and get those stories that personalise the data. We're working with the University of Birmingham on this project with a digital heritage demonstrator. Thank you for your support. And also to address the problem of longevity that we had with the Radius 5 project, we're working with the Birmingham Archives, who are going to house all of the content in the end, so that it will have a life beyond, where people can continuously add content to the product. Just whipping on very finally, we've done other projects, one called iProducer, looking at 4 short films created by young people around Birmingham, featured on YouTube. At a recent dev lab that happened here earlier in the year, we partnered with a company called ScraperWiki, who looked at our data in terms of audiences that we engage with and mapped out our data across the country and more detail in the West Midlands. Although we haven't done anything with this, we see it as an opportunity from our point of view that we could look at how we can monitor the flow of audiences and how we can target gaps in our audiences as well. Other opportunities, we do book, this is very close to the end, writing competitions, but so far it's a very cumbersome process. It's emails and paper. So we want to find ways that we can streamline this so that our international panel of judges can just be sent information and it's all done electronically online. We'll work on that at some point. So in summary, the projects we've worked on have included a variety of different digital technology. We try and keep up with the pace of technological change. Longevity is an issue and documentation, but we're trying to address that. People are important to us, and the organisations, so working with companies and organisations like Birmingham University and also the Birmingham City University with its innovation work are also important to us. We try to make connections with digital organisations and explore other opportunities, and we're kind of taking digital very seriously. At the moment, we're also it was interesting that Hassan was talking about board membership, that innovation comes from the board. We're looking for a board member or a couple of board members in the area of digital technology. That's one of the focuses. So if anybody is interested in helping us spread that word, then please do so by Twitter. Thank you.
What kind of individual are you looking for? Are you looking for a technology developer to be on your board?
Well, we have specific themes around marketing and PR, digital technology and business innovation.
There you go, there's an offer there. Great. Thank you very much, Clayton. That was great. Lots of kind of little things kept sort of coming up for me around, again, sort of legacy and, what happens to some of those digital projects that the website kind of, who owns it, what happens, where do those websites go, and what happens with them. So I think that's actually something that's kind of going to be happening more and more and more as people kind of do these little kind of mini digital projects. And anybody who's got any ideas of actually how you might kind of pull those things together, I think that would be quite an interesting one. And again, I think you highlighted stuff around using data in various ways. And again, I think that's going to be an immensely interesting kind of area in the next coming years. We've kind of had the information age, we've had that. Now, how do we make sense of this stuff? how do we create compelling stories out of all this data? And I suppose, once we're going to start to own our own data more and more. And what does that look like? Once audiences actually really start to own that, how do organizations then start to tap into that as well? So all those things were kind of bubbling up for me. Just, I suppose, in terms of kind of, I think I sent out a few things around failures and successes, and I was really intrigued by knowing whether there was one particular thing that maybe kind of happened or has happened during these projects that's shifted your way of maybe approaching digital or accessing or using digital?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely around understanding the process, because we come from a point of view where we don't know what a coder actually does, what a programmer actually does, and actually don't have that much interested in it, sorry.
Just want it to work.
There's a specialism that needs to sit somewhere, and then there are specialisms that sit elsewhere. We're very much obviously interested in the communities that we work with, the artists that we work with. It's the communities that and the audiences that we engage with are at the heart of what we are doing. So we continuously keep them at the centre of our attention. And find solutions that can wrap around that, and digital technology is one of, if we can find ways that digital technology can solve that, then that's fine. Sometimes it doesn't work, so we don't use it. We don't do things just for the sakes of it, but in certain situations where we can do, we'll use certain bits of technology. And we think for the heritage project called MyRoute, it's a really good example of how digital technology can be used, because it is completely data driven at its outset. And then we'll get the stories from those communities to help drive and personalise that information.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one for me really stood out, because you were kind of saying, it's actually depends on what we get, and that's going to shape how the technology then deals with that stuff. So that's kind of an interesting way of doing things, I think. Because I think often, you can, it's just too tempting, because of the way I think you can just build a platform, and you can put the structure there, you can really kind of almost stifle the kind of creativity, because you're kind of saying it's going to go through the system and it's going to come out and it's going to be in these perfect little boxes that are going to make sense, but actually to kind of allow that. And I think that's where artists come in. I think that's where kind of those really rare individuals that kind of have the digital understanding and are also creative, artistic people are really, really great, because, and I think a lot of digital companies that we work with, often, because we do competitions, so I read a lot of applications. And the amount of stuff that you get in, where you get an application in that just goes, we do augmented reality, and we do this thing, and we do that thing, and it's like, well, okay, but what are you doing with it that's actually really, kind of innovative? What are you doing with it that's kind of going to transform this challenge, or it's going to kind of explore this challenge? Often those things don't kind of come through. So I think it's just really exciting when you kind of marry up that sort of digital and creative and allow for that space to sort of grow. Is there any questions from the audience? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, there's one there. Oh, we've got one, yeah, and we'll come back to you.
It's not really a question, but it's kind of more of a statement, really. I think when you said you don't want to know what a programmer does or a coder does, I think that's an unacceptable attitude for today, and I think it will date you faster than anything, because your audience and your future audience are taking control of the net, and they're putting their own data out there. I mean, nowadays, you read the Guardian newspaper, that's old news. I don't know if anybody else has this experience, but I read some of the stuff in the Guardian, I think, well, I knew about that a week ago. What are you talking about? So your audience are already engaged with this stuff, and this is our world now. And the programmers and the coders are not weird geeks off in a corner, and you really need to, I think, get a handle on that. It's not something distant, and it shouldn't be something that you hand over to a tech person and ask them to deal with, because it isn't actually that difficult. You can do it yourself.
Clayton, you have to learn coding now.
No, because actually the young people, and young, it's quite a big spread, they're not separate. They are doing coding, and they're creative, and they're designers, and they're innovators. It's their technology. So it's us. I mean, I'm older than you, Clayton, so, you know, it's us that have that struggle with the technology. The young people don't. They're doing it, and they're creative. So that's exactly my point, and it was the point that came from the first where the technology lady said, you know, she was totally separate from the creativity and they had lived different language. It's just the age of the development, and actually young people are doing that. You need to know that the government has changed learning in schools. So instead of the old ICT, which was absolutely appalling, they now are developing computer science. So young people from a very early age in school will be doing creativity, they'll be doing coding as part of their coursework. So you haven't got long to wait,
And
because you've
they're
got
very
young people
lucky.
coming through.
Because we didn't have that.
Can
We got taught
can
how
I
to
respond?
print. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, not that I don't think, not interested in what the code is doing. Of course I'm interested. I just know they can do it far, far, far better than I can. So if I'm going to use expertise, I'd rather they concentrate on that expertise and we concentrate on the expertise of working with communities and then have the conversation dialogue together.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay. We'll do one more and then we'll move on to you guys and then we can do more questions again.
Hi, I'm just interested in learning those projects that fizzled out and nothing happened to them. Just take one of them. What was the main reason for it? Was it funding or something else? No,
it's more around trying to work to a demand where we know that there are young people that want to work for this or communities that want to engage with arts activity in some way. So we find opportunities. It's just the unfortunate thing where we have no money. We always have to find money from somewhere. That's why I talk about the longevity being one of the problems with particularly the Radius 5 project in terms of where that content then sits and what happens with that content thereafter. Yes, you could say it fizzled out, but there was a learning curve there as well. So we're taking that learning curve into this new project, the MyRoute one, which the content that's produced from working with those communities will sit within the servers of the Birmingham Archives, and they'll manage that whole process, and they'll archive it in the standard ways, and it will allow people to participate as well.
So what's the learning curve? If there is, you said there's a learning curve, what's the learning from it?
The learning is just a whole series of planning. Just plan and make sure that you think about the future life of projects rather than, and what people might be able to get from projects. It's about making sure there's a sustainability beyond the project timescale. About if you're going to do something which is, for example, a web-based data visualization, then what happens to that content after the project is finished? And that's a question that we need to start asking ourselves on the future projects that we work on.
Thanks.
Can I interject?
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that I think within a kind of network culture that everything's iterative and that you can't just kind of build something and leave it because you are just leaving it then. You have to keep kind of revisiting if you want to keep it kind of up to date. I think that's something that is really important in these projects anyway.
Well, I think there's a project idea there anyway. You know, go and scour and find all those web pages, all those things that are kind of not being used and see what we can do with it.
Can I just add something to that? I'm from Sampad, I'm the programme manager. The projects haven't fizzled out, and it's going back to what you're saying, Matt. We have learnt quite a lot, and each individual project had a separate learning added to it. For example, Mandala, that was London Festival 2012 LOCOG coming to us and saying we want to do a big spectacle which has South Asian content, and then Clayton came up with the original idea of working with SEPA. So there's a massive learning with regards to audience participation just for that project alone, because it was the first time that we worked with a different sector and we weren't satisfied. I'm not going to say it was a failure, but as a team, as an organisation, as a project, we weren't satisfied that we were able to deliver the audience engagement enough on that particular project. So now we are looking at the legacy of it, and we're in talks with Glasgow 2014 and also taking it to India, where we will be able to process the audience engagement more within it. And with regards to the other projects, they haven't filtered off at all. For example, Radius 5, that was a pilot. Although we call it data visualization, in reality it was a digital map. So what we're doing is we're taking the learning from that and hoping that we're going to be able to work on that for the My Route project, where we will be able to create something and devise something that we can truly call data visualization. And with the, what's the new art gallery project?
The Dance Dub.
Yeah, Dance Dub, that what truly was an experiment for us to see if we could create this video in one single take and how we could encourage our dancers to work on that. So they haven't filtered up and we have learned a lot from it.
So they're kind of launch pads for extra things coming off them. That's great. Okay, so we're just going to move on now, if that's okay, and we'll do some more questions and answers. I'd like to introduce Dave.
Okay, so my name is Matt Davenport. I won't bore you with the processes and the kind of information around the organisation because I did a talk yesterday around that, so if you want to know more, come and find me at the end. But I work for React Hub in the southwest in Bristol. I'm based at an organisation called Watershed, which is an arts organisation. And we produce a project for the Arts and Humanities Research Council, bringing together academics and creative companies to work together to share knowledge and expertise. I work in a place called Pervasive Media Studio, and it's kind of got an ethos where we bring the benefits of interdisciplinary working together. So we saw that the SMEs and smaller SMEs in particular couldn't have the time that they needed to create their own IP, intellectual property, and they needed time to research and develop. So the project basically brings together academic research and creative companies for knowledge exchange, but also supports SMEs to develop their own intellectual property over a 3-month period. The process that we use is called Sandbox, and within that period of 3 months, we have an intensive iterative period of rapid prototyping to develop a new digital prototype based around different themes. The themes are based upon industry peril or demand. So the first theme that we chose, it was kind of like a low-hanging fruit, I guess, for academia, was the heritage sector. And I'm pleased that we have one of the projects that's just completed within our cohort, Splash and Ripple, Mark and Rosie here today, who are going to explain a little bit about a project called Ghosts in the Garden, which happened at the Sydney Gardens at the Holborn Museum in Bath. An academic historian from UWE at the University of the West of England called Steve Poole worked with Rosie and Mark to develop a project around the characters and the rich histories of the Sydney Gardens in the Georgian period, where they were kind of an Alton Towers of their day. Is that the way you describe it? Yeah. And they also have the prototype here, these Georgian listening devices, which we'll demonstrate. But I'm just going to show you the video from the project because Rosie's not very well at the moment, and the project can not in a bad way. She's just not. She's suffering. So I'm gonna basically show the video because that'll explain it a lot more than I ever could. And so yeah, Rob, if you can do that for us. Have you got audio as well?
You should have asked that earlier.
I should have asked that.
What Ghosts in the Garden has been about is about place, actually. It's about a distinct place, a particular place. Of course it's about history, and of course it's about pleasure gardens, but it's also about a park that people in this area walk in all the time without necessarily thinking about who's walked here before. So to uncover some real history, to think about the discipline of how we discover the real histories, how we put people from the past back into the land on which we walk, I think that's just such a valuable, that's so much better than making it up.
What we're hoping is that as they have this kind of physical connection to the past and they walk around and they're listening into stuff, it's going to paint the picture of what was going on here. And it was a busy, bustling place. There were all kinds of things happening. So we kind of want people to sort of go away with that experience.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello. You stay in one place. One moment.
Excellent! Allow me to introduce myself. My name is John Joseph Merlin, inventor, maker of musical instruments and creator of amazing mechanisms.
The experience is powered by a game mechanic in the form of a choose-your-own-adventure scenario. So you start at the first scene and you're given a couple of choices and you need to decide what you're going to do. And there's some kind of jeopardy there or some kind of decision about who you're going to trust.
You should either head over to the wonderful Cosmorama with Mr. Prydle, or walk up the hill to the swings to see if anyone's lurking.
The really unique thing about what we've done here is to allow a sort of a fictive representation of a pleasure ground to dominate the project, but a fictive representation that's thoroughly informed by real historical research. When I look at projects of a similar kind elsewhere in the country, it always seems to me that's not what we've got. And neither has this been a sort of a digital guidebook, which we didn't want to do that either. We wanted it to be much more involving and exciting.
So they get given one of these, which is the special listening device, and people go out and take the objects with them and listen into what's happening at different places.
I mean, these are the only surviving pleasure gardens, but nothing from the pleasure gardens survives. I mean, the labyrinth's gone, all the excitements are not there, and I think and hope what this sort of experience gives a sense of is quite what used to happen here, the life there used to be of lights and fireworks and illuminations and labyrinths and swings and all the rest of it. And so I hope they get a sense of the sort of layers of history through where we are.
My delivery method is either through lecture, seminar, presentation, or through book or learned article. So I can talk to public audiences that way, but it's very kind of one way. But this, of course, is an entirely different thing. We're allowing the public, more or less, to kind of find their own way through the research. So these are just new ways of working for me. These are new kinds of outcome, and I've had to listen to people from other disciplines about what will work and what won't work, and I'm just not used to this. But I think I've done quite well, really.
I think that we've done it. I think people are coming back and they're talking about how they feel about the space, and they're using language about imagining what it was like, and they're saying it's evocative, that the soundscape made them imagine what it was like when it was a pleasure garden, and that was exactly what we were trying to achieve.
Oh, you still here? Get along and follow Mr. Prydle to the Cosmorama, or find out if there are any beggars by the swings. Hurry!
So that sort of explains the project a little bit. Sorry that it's a little bit dark in here on the film with the sunshine out today.
It's too light.
Too light, sorry. Too light, yeah, not dark. So yeah, basically it was born out of a challenge that maybe Rosie can explain a little bit more about, to try and get audiences out into the gardens and explore more out of the museum. And that was where the project was born, really. Do you want to explain?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Rosie. I'm the creative director at Splash and Ripple. I love these things. So we're a company that makes experiences, and our aim is to change the way people see and feel the world. And we do that in a number of different ways. We use street gaming, we use theatre, we use digital stuff. We kind of use whatever we need to use to create an exciting experience. So we're kind of creative and tech all smooshed into kind of one palpitating creature. That's kind of our background. I've got this kind of theatrical street game background, and I wanted to create something that made people feel a sense of the past. So, when I first met the director of the Holborn Museum, which is the museum that's kind of on the edge of this park, he wanted an app. They said, get us an app. We really want an app. And I kind of said, okay, but what do you actually want to achieve? And what they wanted was a new audience, and they wanted people to learn more about these gardens that have this incredible history that no one knows about. So we had a bit more of a chat, and I kind of told them that they didn't really want an app at all. What they wanted was something that sort of engaged people. I've got a phobia of making things that just force people to kind of just stare at their phone the whole time rather than experience the world. So I kind of talked them out of it a little bit. And what we came up with was this, which is our special listening device, which tunes into events as they happen in the past. So depending on where you are in the gardens, they'll sort of tune you into scenes, and then you're given a choice and you have to decide where you're going to go next, and that affects the story, and it's choose your own adventure. I'm going to reveal this to you, don't tell anyone, but it's not just a magical box. It is powered by an app, but you don't know that. You don't know that. And no one has to fiddle with phones or anything. And that was kind of one of the things that it was very important for me to hide the technology. And it was one of the things that we learned was that while people, particularly older people, might be afraid of engaging with a smartphone, give them a magical box and they're fine. They're perfectly comfortable with that. Because you're handing them part of the story, and it's a prop. It's kind of it turns the audience into part of the performance of what's going on. So they're walking around with this magic thing, and suddenly they feel quite different about walking around because they've got this thing that's talking to them and buzzing and kind of making strange noises. So that was kind of one of the key learning things was, okay, you can have things powered by technology, but actually you can do much more creative, interesting things to disguise that and just make the experience 100 times better because of that. The other thing that it does is it engages with the audience on several different levels. We were aiming at kind of younger people and families, but actually it kind of appealed to a much broader range of people. But the interesting thing was that you got, depending on your age, you got different things out of it. So sort of an 8-year-old would be fascinated with the object and want to hold it and kind of carry it around and be kind of excited about it. The scripts were quite sophisticated and interesting, so there was something there for their parents as well to kind of read into. It was kind of like one of those Pixar movies where, you know, the parents take the kids along and the parents are laughing at different jokes to the kids, but everyone's laughing and enjoying it. So there's kind of different levels of engagement, and it kind of worked in that way. And yeah, having this object gave people more agency and made them feel in control of their experience, which was quite nice too. And like we said in the film, they came away with a real sense of what the history of that place was and kind of what it felt like, because we had bits of music and kind of background sounds and stuff as you walked around. So they really came away with a good sense of stuff.
I think it's a really important point, actually, the fact that you're working with your potential audiences along the kind of design journey, which is really helping them to advocate for the project, but also they have an investment in this as well along the way. So you're already kind of engaging with the potential audience from the start.
Yeah. It was interesting. I mean, the people it didn't, in terms of non-success, the people it didn't engage with were the people who enjoy reading lengthy reams of information about the history of a place. And that's fine, it wasn't designed for them. It was kind of designed for people who weren't so didn't want to read loads of stuff, but just wanted something they could do with their family and maybe learn something a bit. And that's kind of what we did. We kind of trapped them into this game, and they came away knowing loads of stuff about the sort of people who inhabited these gardens in Georgian times without even kind of realising that they'd done learning, which was kind of quite nice. So yeah, it worked quite well, I think.
Great, that's so exciting. I'd have loved to have done that. It just sounds amazing, really good fun.
Well, we're going to be installing it again in the spring.
Yeah.
At the Holborn Museum, so come.
So we're going to see people wandering about these boxes more and more as we go around. But no, I was really interested in this kind of multi-level engagement, which I think you've really managed to do with that. And I think, aside from obviously this kind of really enticing little box that is sort of magical, it also takes away that whole thing around kind of iPhones and Androids and is it going to work and is it not, and actually takes away a lot of that, because I think often all those kind of, some of those technical issues again become the thing that you focus on. And just to say that Splash and Ripple are also working with ThoughtDen on a project that we're funding up in the National Museums of Scotland, and it's called Capture the Museum. And I think, again, I mean, another thing that kind of really sort of came up is when we had the project launch meeting. We do this thing called the project launch meeting when we fund a kind of a contest. And we have the developers and the challenge partner, everybody sits together and we kind of discuss, okay, so this is what the challenge was, this is what you said you're going to do, but now we need to look at what's actually really possible to do. And I think that's a really important bit, actually, because you were saying they wanted an app, and you said, well, actually, okay, well, it is an app, but you know, it's actually inside this box, and to kind of take them on that journey. And I think allowing for that to happen sort of organically when you're doing projects just is absolutely key, and it kind of just takes you on a journey. But I just wanted to kind of ask you, what sort of tips would you give somebody who's kind of working with, heritage organisation where they kind of might want to know exactly what's going to happen, and you kind of turn up and you say, because I remember in the meeting with Ben, who was saying, well, we're not really, and you were saying, we're not really sure, but can we go on a journey with you? And you were kind of, you had this great conversation. So, what are your kind of handy tips for anybody out there who wants to kind of, take cultural organisations on a journey, and take them maybe somewhere that they didn't expect to go?
I would say that the first thing I always say in a meeting like that with the cultural organisation or the heritage partner, whoever, is what is it that who is your audience, but what is it that you actually want them to experience and to feel? I'm quite a kind of experience-y, feely type person, so that's always primary in my mind, and it's kind of, so what Hugh at the National Museum of Scotland was after was something exciting and engaging and quite different. So we ended up coming up with this kind of cross between Risk and Capture the Flag and sticking it in the museum, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of dashing around and capturing territories and stuff within this museum. But that's kind of what they wanted. They wanted something that would be fun, that would happen on a Saturday, that kids could get involved in and stuff. With this project in Bath, I kept asking, what do you actually want your audience to go away with at the end of the day? And what they wanted was, they wanted people to go home with a sense of what it was like. And that was like the headline of the brief for me. They didn't really have a brief, that was the thing. They often don't have a brief, and you've got to kind of write your own brief according to kind of what they want. But starting with what they want their audience to take away with, on a very kind of, not on a kind of, we want sort of 1,000 hits on a thing, or, just more, what do you want people to walk home with and be talking about when they get home, is the most important starting point, I think.
So experience-led. And then kind of use the right kind of tools to then create that experience. Yeah. And it might not necessarily always be digital, or digital might be a small part or a big part of that thing. So.
You then build the brief, and because you've both agreed this is what we're trying to get to, explaining, okay, this is how we're going to get there, makes a load more sense to them.
I think I mentioned yesterday that one of the learnings out of the process that we've been through is that don't let people obsess over the technology. Yeah. And that kind of, like you said, start with the experience up front and what do you actually want out of this, rather than the kind of one-trick pony of, it's a touchscreen and it does this or it does that.
Let's have an app.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we open up? Is there any questions from audience? Great. Who wants to go first? Go over there. Thank you.
It's a question for Rosie. Did Sydney Gardens give you any feedback on the kinds of people it attracted, whether it was their existing audience who engaged more deeply, whether it attracted a new audience in a different way, and also do they have any other kind of feedback, like it raised their profile locally or regionally?
We've got, basically we installed it, we didn't install it for very long because of the nature of the React sandbox, and it was like a 3-month project and then you're done sort of thing, and a lot of those 3 months was the development of what it is. So we only installed it for kind of under a week in total. But it sort of invited people to come along. So there was a bit of a skew on the audience that we had. But we had a fair few people just kind of wandered up and got involved. But we're looking to install it in the spring. for like 3 months solidly, and we'll have a load more kind of that kind of audience data at that stage, hopefully. But yeah, so it didn't attract a new audience because we didn't kind of put it in their what's on brochure or anything like that. It was people who were coming to the museum anyway, who then went out into the gardens with these objects and had a play. But it kind of engaged with the age groups that we thought it might, kind of, so that the families really enjoyed it and kind of younger people found it interesting. Actually, yeah, I don't know. It was kind of a broad range of people appreciated it. It was almost personality type. So people who like facts and don't like carrying stuff like this around didn't really go for it. Because that's quite I don't know. Some people would feel embarrassed carrying that around.
Did you get anyone trying to sort of break into it, find out what's inside and stuff?
Yeah, but we can lock them. Yeah. So not forcibly enough. These are all kind of, yeah, nice museum goer-y type people, I guess. So, no.
That's the first thing I would have wanted to do.
Yeah, well, people do try and get inside, but yeah, we lock them.
I had a kid on my tour who was trying his best to break it
really?
all the way around. Yeah. But he was leading with the device, and we were just following him, so it was great.
It's great. Okay, we had another question, I think. Just, yeah.
I was just wondering, from the start of the project, from the initial proposal to when you launched it, how long did that take? What kind of time commitment would that?
We had 3 months. It probably took more like 4 months, to be honest.
Yeah.
But that was from not really having an idea of what we were doing. And the point of React is that it's more about the kind of research and development than it is in an end product. And I think our project was quite unique in that we ended up with an end product, which...
we want everyone to get to the stage where they've got a prototype and they've user tested that prototype. That's kind of what we ask. And some of the projects still haven't done their user testing, but they will do. And then we try and support the projects afterwards to get more business development support, or to try and get some more project funding, or to get to a point where they can actually realise what the project is.
It felt like a real rush, though. 3 months
just
wasn't enough. Enough time. But yeah, 4 months was comfortable.
It's such a great way of doing things, because I think, often it's like, you get involved. I worked with the counter-terrorism unit here for 9 months on a project where we made a computer game. But, it was a 9-month project. It took, it was like, actually what would have been great is to have done a really quick prototype at the beginning and tested it and seen, how's this working, and go on to the next thing. And I think, I just wanted to ask, how does React, how do you kind of choose the places where you do the sandbox with? How do you do that bit?
So this first round of projects, they kind of had another partner because they needed to be located in a museum, or one of them was with a cemetery, just with the nature of the projects. I'm not sure for books and print we might have publishers, that's the next sandbox. We might have some authors, we might have writers. But yeah, we don't choose, we kind of, we help.
It's an application process.
I was interested. So you just kind of put the call out, and then they kind of write. Okay.
We broker relationships at a very early stage between the academics that we work with within the 5 institutions that we work with, and the creative companies in the Southwest. But it's not limited to the Southwest. So if there's anyone who's interested in the Midlands, then get in touch. It's react-hub.org, the website. But yeah, that's how it starts. And we start with a process where we have a kind of open space session for a day where we bring together people to have chats and kind of raise topics and talk about the things and the challenges that they're dealing with and how they might work together. So we kind of are a little bit hands off, and then we kind of broker those relationships and try and work across the remit of the 3 different ideas labs we have around the Southwest to work to get people together who are dealing with similar challenges.
I'm conscious of time. We are supposed to. It's 12:30. I know that we can people can chat more during lunch, but just before kind of wrapping up, I just wanted to kind of hear from each one of you, just maybe an experience that you might have had that, in terms of kind of like as an audience member yourselves, that you can kind of remember where you were just really captivated. Put you on the spot. I think I sent that through, but if I didn't, if there is something, if there isn't.
I probably could.
Yeah,
It
go on.
would be the first street game I ever did back in 2007, which is
Okay.
what got me into this crazy game in the first place.
Okay.
Which was called Manila, and it was like a spy game, and you got a manila envelope which had instructions of where to go, and I had to sort of take the tube across London and meet someone with a rendezvous with a specific code word, but someone else was meeting them at the same time, and they could tag me and catch me if I wasn't careful. And it was so exciting. It literally transformed my whole afternoon, and how I saw London for that afternoon, because I was running for the first time since I'd been at school. I was running flat out to get there on time, and just looking for spies everywhere, and I just felt so different about London. I was grown up in London, but suddenly it was completely different, and that's the power of games and street games and stuff. But I was right in the middle of the experience, and it was my experience, and how I reacted dictated what happened, and that's why it was really powerful for me.
And it kind of really suited your personality. I think that's the thing around kind of experience, isn't it? It's like, for some people, when you go to those sort of immersive theatre stuff, it's the worst thing that they could do.
But it's not performance. I wasn't performing.
For others, it's just the most amazing thing.
Yeah, this is better than immersive theatre.
Yeah.
I think it's like the next few iterations on from that, because I'm not performing. It's not like role play.
Well, you're playing.
I'm being myself.
Yeah.
But in a world that's changed slightly.
Yeah.
That's what's
it's
really
kind of got
powerful.
a layer on top.
Yeah,
so
it's like augmented reality, but in a really interesting way, not in a stupid phone way. And
in a stupid phone. Okay, I think we've established no more apps now. I'm kidding. No.
Sorry, but yeah, I wasn't performing, so it hasn't got that ickiness that sometimes people feel about immersive theatre. Although I love immersive theatre too, and we use that as well.
Yeah. Everyone loves a zombie attack in their city.
Yeah, zombie chase games in the city you can't beat.
Okay. Matt, anything?
Is it okay to like your own game?
Yeah, you can like your own. Yeah.
Well, I became involved in this project with a group called Active Ingredient, and then became very involved because of the fact that I loved it so much, and started working on it with them, which was called Heartlands, where you use a phone. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You use a phone, and you go out and you have to explore a city using your heart rate to play the game. That's your joystick, basically. So you go as far as you can, and you basically have to keep your heart rate within its optimum for your age, weight, and height. So you're running and slowing down and speeding up. And basically, I became involved in the game and plotted little eggs in the game. So people had to collect these eggs, and we had people in kind of Paris, when we showed it there, jumping into the river to collect the eggs and ruining all of our equipment and things like that. And that game became a really personal kind of project for me, and it was really born out of the fact that I just wanted to get involved. As soon as I played the game, and I had this adrenaline rush after I first played the game, I was like, I know how we can develop this. I know what we can do next. And they let me kind of go forward and work with them.
You've successfully engaged your audience when they're jumping into the river in order to...
There was another guy in Tokyo who worked out that on the tube system there that he could get a 3G signal and just ran up and down the tube to score the most points, because you travel as far as you can to earn points, which was another really cool point.
That's dedication. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got one. Is it possible to bring up one of the slides again? Because I'll be able to explain it better to you.
Do you want
to put that film? Can you
we might have to leave the film. I don't know if there'll be enough time. But basically, again, I'm going to refer back to Media Lab Prado. They did a project with 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 7th slide. And it's the game Tetris, but it's played by 2 people running around a public space in front of a big screen in front of them. Mm-hmm. Let's see if this will come up.
Can you go backwards and forwards or anything?
It's a different presentation, that one.
Can you describe it?
Yeah. So there's a sensor in front of that's facing down the square. One person runs one direction, and they control where the Tetris blocks go from left to right. The other person's running from left to right, and they're controlling whether it's flipped horizontal or vertical. So there's this game which is played by people running around a public square, to create the Tetris game. It's you can't really see it very well here, but there are two individuals down on a square there, and it always attracts quite a large audience of people watching all of this happen at the same time. This is on the front of Media Lab, or one on the side of Media Lab Prado building. Got this huge digital facade there. And they're commissioning projects to happen there. So if you're ever interested in commissioning, want to get involved with one of the commissions, then get in contact with them. But there are two people there. The Tetris blocks fall down, and then they have to control the positioning of those Tetris blocks. It's just a really good, fun game. You do it with the photo. Oh yeah, sorry, it's the light as well. It's you use the light of your mobile phone so it can see where you are on the square.
Great. Okay, and I've got one to share, which was, well, I used to work as a performer for years and years in sort of doing sort of large outdoor theatre stuff at Glastonbury and big festivals. Part of a group called Kiss My Axe, which then turned into Area 51. But one of the things that I remember, I mean, it was actually, I was kind of an audience and also a performer at the same time. We were doing a really big arena show with tanks and hovercrafts, and it was like a slightly Armageddon type thing. This was before health and safety. Like, we weren't checked at all, so we had all this stuff. The guy that we got all the tanks from actually parachuted into Glastonbury. So it was, we're talking, you know, this would never happen now. But I was dressed as a Victorian with a friend of mine. We were going around the middle of this crazy field of, you know, people on tanks and sort of having a picnic just to kind of freak some people out, you know, sort of sitting down and having tea, and, you know, people would watch us. And the next thing was I heard the audience just completely just go berserk, you know, like everyone's cheering. I'm thinking, what's going on? You know, I didn't know that we had this. I look over and the hovercraft was on fire. And basically what had happened was that one of the guys on the tank, his flare had run out, and he'd just thrown it, and it had landed in the hovercraft, and actually the audience thought it was part of the show. I just kind of wanted to sort of throw that in, sometimes those sort of really unexpected things. And we were all panicking, running around, trying to kind of put this fire out, and it was not meant to happen at all. But actually, loads of people came up to us, and they kept saying, that bit where the hovercraft set on fire, it was amazing. And we were like, yeah, okay, yeah, great. You know, so it was kind of as an audience member kind of watching on as well as sort of experiencing it. I think that's probably my most memorable. So it was an unexpected thing. But I'd just like to give a warm round of applause to our panel. That was really, really interesting, all the projects. And you guys are around for the rest of the day, are you? Are you around for lunch? So if there's any other questions, I know that there was, certainly kind of maybe grab the guys and have a chat to them. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so everybody, just to let you know, lunch is in the penthouse. So if you make your way out towards where you registered this morning, if you don't know where that is, one of my colleagues will take you up in the lift.